We all seek happiness. It's something we naturally want in life. We chase after it, thinking that once we reach it, everything will be perfect. But life is rarely that simple. While we pursue happiness, we often face challenges that test our patience, strength, and emotional resilience. Take, for example, the feeling of a new job. At first, it feels like a victory, like you finally made it. The pay is better, the work is exciting, and you feel motivated. But as time goes on, the challenges surface. Maybe the workload is heavier than expected, or the office politics drain your energy. Suddenly, the job that was supposed to bring happiness becomes a source of stress. You might even find yourself questioning whether you made the right choice. Yet, this struggle, this discomfort, is part of life. It's a constant push and pull between what we want and what we have to face to get there. Then, there's the struggle of relationships. Relationships are meant to bring joy, to connect us with others, to share our lives with someone. But they also require work. Misunderstandings happen. People hurt each other, even unintentionally. You might find yourself in a situation where you're deeply invested in someone, but it feels like you're stuck in a pattern of disagreement or emotional distance. These moments challenge your emotional resilience. You might feel lost, wondering why something that started with happiness now feels complicated. But these challenges, these moments of tension, are part of understanding the deeper layers of a relationship. Without them, we would miss the chance to grow and become more resilient. Another challenge we face comes from our own minds. Sometimes, we feel like we're doing everything right. We exercise, eat well, and try to keep a positive outlook on life. But the feelings of sadness, anxiety, or frustration still show up. It can feel like you're doing everything you can to be happy, but it's just not happening. This battle within ourselves is something that everyone faces. Mental health struggles are a reality for many, and they're not always easy to overcome. It's easy to believe that happiness is just around the corner, but sometimes it feels like we're running in circles. We face moments where we feel like we're failing, or that happiness is slipping further out of reach. These moments can test us. They demand that we find strength we didn't know we had. Think about the challenges that come with personal growth. It's easy to think that happiness means staying in a comfortable place where everything is predictable. But true happiness often comes from pushing ourselves beyond what's familiar. To grow, we have to face the discomfort of change. Whether it's learning a new skill, facing a fear, or taking on a new responsibility, growth brings its own set of struggles. You might want to avoid the discomfort, but the happiness that comes with progress is often worth the challenge. However, there's always a struggle involved. Without the tension of growth, the reward of happiness wouldn't feel as fulfilling. Happiness can also be tested by external forces. For instance, unexpected events like illness, the loss of a loved one, or financial hardship can pull happiness away. These events feel like a heavy weight on our shoulders, making it hard to see any light. In these times, happiness seems like a distant dream. Yet, it's often through these hard times that we develop emotional resilience. It's when life throws these challenges at us that we discover how strong we really are. You might find yourself coping in ways you never thought possible, leaning on others for support, or discovering inner strength you didn't know you had. As we try to balance our pursuit of happiness, life's challenges keep showing up. The important thing isn't avoiding the struggle, but learning how to handle it. When challenges arise, they push us to find new ways of thinking, new ways of coping, and new ways of adapting. They force us to be present and deal with the reality of life, rather than escaping into a fantasy of what happiness should look like. We might not always like the struggle, but it's through facing these challenges that we develop the emotional resilience to handle whatever comes next. In each of these situations, Happiness isn't something we just find and keep forever. It's a process. We chase after it, only to be met with obstacles, setbacks, and moments of uncertainty. But rather than seeing these struggles as signs of failure, they can be viewed as the very things that make the pursuit of happiness meaningful. They test us, they shape us, and through them, we gain the emotional strength to keep going, even when the road is tough. We all want freedom, the ability to make our own choices, to decide what we do with our time, and to live life on our own terms. It sounds simple, even exciting. But as soon as we gain that freedom, we realize that it comes with something else, a responsibility. With the power to make choices comes the burden of dealing with the consequences of those choices. Imagine a person who leaves their steady job to start their own business. The freedom to work on their own terms feels like a dream. No more office hours, no more answering to a boss. They get to set their own schedule, choose their projects, and work in a way that feels authentic to them. But soon, they realize that every decision they make has a consequence. The freedom they sought now means they are responsible for the success or failure of the business. If the business falters, they are the ones who have to figure out how to fix it. If things go well, it's their responsibility to manage growth, make the right calls, and keep things on track. What once felt like an escape from rules becomes a new set of rules they must follow, just of their own making. Take a different example. A teenager getting their first car. It represents freedom, the ability to go where they want, when they want. No more relying on parents for rides. It feels like the ultimate form of independence, but soon enough, that freedom brings responsibility. They now have to take care of the car, regular maintenance, paying for gas, handling repairs when things go wrong. They have to drive safely, follow the rules of the road, and make sure they don't cause accidents. Suddenly, the very freedom they sought brings a new weight. Their choices on the road have real consequences. If they don't follow the rules, they could get into trouble or even harm someone. These examples highlight the tension between freedom and responsibility. On the surface, freedom seems simple. Make your own choices, live your life without restrictions. But the moment we gain that freedom, we also gain the need to manage the results of those choices. The more freedom we have, the more responsibility we take on. Consider the situation of a person who chooses to live alone. The idea of living independently might sound appealing. They can decorate their space however they want, eat what they like, and have complete control over their environment. But living alone also means they are solely responsible for everything. They have to cook, clean, and manage their own bills. If something breaks in the apartment, they have to deal with it. There's no one else to rely on. The freedom to live independently comes with the burden of managing all aspects of that life. In some ways, freedom and responsibility are two sides of the same coin. We crave freedom because it gives us control, but with that control comes the need to handle the outcomes of our choices. For example, when we choose to live a certain way, whether that's choosing a career, a lifestyle, or a relationship, we are also choosing the consequences that come with it. If we choose to pursue a career that we love, it might mean long hours, hard work, and a lack of free time. If we choose to get into a relationship, we are taking on the responsibility of nurturing it, making compromises, and being accountable for our actions. People often want to escape responsibility, believing that freedom will make life easier. But in reality, more freedom means more decisions, and every decision requires us to face the potential outcomes. When we make a choice, we have to live with it. That's where the burden of responsibility comes in. It forces us to be accountable for what we do. This accountability isn't always easy. It can feel like a weight, like something holding us down when all we want is the freedom to live without worry. Think about someone who is free to live wherever they want. They can pick any city or country, move anywhere, and live a life they imagine. But the more places they visit or move to, the more they realize that each place brings new challenges. They might face cultural differences, language barriers, or the challenge of building a new social circle. With the freedom to choose where to live comes the responsibility of adjusting to that new place, making it work, and ensuring they're happy and comfortable. It's easy to think that freedom means simplicity, but the reality is that the more choices we make, the more we must adapt and handle the changes that come with them. Take another example of someone who has the freedom to quit a job and travel the world. The idea of seeing new places, experiencing different cultures, and living without a set routine seems like the perfect way to live. However, the responsibility that comes with this freedom is managing the logistics of the journey. They have to figure out how to pay for their travels, plan the details, deal with visas, and ensure their safety. The freedom to travel is exciting, but it's not without challenges. The responsibility of managing their life on the road takes time, effort, and careful planning. Even in relationships, the freedom to love and choose a partner brings responsibility. A healthy relationship requires effort, communication, and compromise. Each partner is responsible for their actions and how they affect the other person. While it's easy to think of love as pure freedom, in reality, it's a shared responsibility. It's about making decisions that are best for both people, dealing with the challenges of the relationship, and being accountable for one's own actions. When we think about freedom, it's easy to imagine it as the absence of responsibility. But in truth, the more freedom we have, the more responsibility we carry. Every choice we make adds weight. Sometimes that weight can feel heavy, but it's also part of what makes freedom meaningful. Without responsibility, our choices would lose their significance. The ability to make decisions and control our lives would mean little if there were no need to consider the consequences. Freedom is empowering, but it is also a reminder that every choice matters, and with that comes the responsibility to live with the results. We all seek comfort. The feeling of stability, safety, and knowing what to expect each day is something we naturally crave. It's the place where we can relax, unwind, and feel in control. But sometimes, growth requires stepping outside of that comfort zone. It means facing the unknown, trying new things, and pushing ourselves beyond what feels easy. Imagine a person who's been working at the same job for years. The work is steady, and they know the tasks inside and out. The routine is predictable, and there's little stress involved. It's comfortable. But over time, they start to feel stagnant. They realize that they're not learning anything new or growing in their role. While the comfort of stability feels good in the short term, it doesn't lead to progress. To grow, they would have to take a risk, perhaps by asking for a more challenging project or even considering a job change. This step could lead to new skills, new opportunities, and the chance to develop professionally, but it's a risk. Stepping out of comfort requires courage because there's always the possibility of failure, uncertainty, and discomfort. Take another example, someone thinking about going back to school. They have a stable life. They're comfortable in their daily routine, but they feel unfulfilled. They've always dreamed of changing careers or learning something new, but the idea of going back to school seems daunting. It means adjusting to a new schedule, studying for exams, and possibly facing failure in the process. It's a huge change from the comfortable life they've built. Yet, it's often through these uncomfortable experiences that real growth happens. The challenge of learning new things, facing difficult subjects, and balancing school with life outside is uncomfortable. But this discomfort is often the path to personal growth, better job prospects, and a deeper sense of fulfillment. Sometimes growth requires us to confront our own fears. Think about someone who's afraid of public speaking. They've always avoided situations where they have to speak in front of others. The idea of standing before a group makes them anxious. The comfort lies in staying quiet, in not putting themselves out there. But if they want to grow, whether it's for their career, personal development, or just to overcome their fear, they have to step into that discomfort. They have to take on the challenge, even if it feels overwhelming at first. It won't be easy, but each time they speak in front of others, they get better. They learn to handle their nerves, improve their communication skills, and gain confidence. The growth doesn't come from staying in a safe place. It comes from taking on what's uncomfortable. Growth is also about change. It can be hard to let go of the comfort of what we know. This might be a relationship that's no longer working, or a living situation that's not ideal. The comfortable choice is to stay where we are because change feels risky, but staying stagnant can lead to frustration, dissatisfaction, and missed opportunities. To grow, we often have to let go of what's comfortable and face the challenges of change. It could mean moving to a new place, starting fresh, or even facing difficult conversations. It's uncomfortable, but necessary if we want to move forward. Even in personal health, growth often requires stepping outside comfort zones. People who have been sedentary may want to get in shape, but are used to a routine where they don't exercise. The comfort of lying on the couch, watching TV, or staying in their usual habits feels easy. But growth in fitness requires them to push their limits, whether it's running a little farther, lifting heavier weights, or trying a new workout. It's tough at first. The body protests and there's discomfort, but over time, that discomfort leads to strength, endurance, and health improvements. Staying in the comfort zone of inactivity may feel good in the short term, but it doesn't lead to the kind of growth that improves one's health. The desire for comfort is deeply human. We like predictability. We like to know what comes next, but comfort doesn't always lead to progress. Growth often requires stepping into uncertainty. When we stay too long in our comfort zones, we risk stagnation. You risk missing out on the potential for change, improvement, and new experiences. It's easy to stay where things feel familiar, where we know the rules and the outcomes. But it's in the discomfort of trying something new that we learn. It's in the unfamiliar that we grow. Think about someone who decides to start a new hobby, perhaps learning to play the guitar. At first, it's frustrating. Their fingers hurt and the notes don't sound right. The comfort would be to quit and return to the safety of not trying. But if they stick with it, the discomfort eventually fades. They begin to improve, to play more confidently, and to enjoy the process of learning. That discomfort, that feeling of not being good enough at first, is part of what makes the growth so rewarding. Without it, there would be no progress. Without stepping outside their comfort zone, they would never have learned to play at all. Growth requires us to embrace the unknown, to take on challenges that make us uncomfortable, and to keep going even when the path isn't clear. We can't grow by staying in a safe space. We can't develop new skills, gain new experiences, or change our lives without stepping outside what's familiar. This doesn't mean we have to throw away all comfort. It simply means that to grow, we sometimes have to face the discomfort of change and push through it. The key to growth isn't avoiding discomfort. It's learning how to handle it, how to push through the fear or uncertainty, and how to keep moving forward. That's where growth happens, in the moments when we feel like giving up, but choose to keep going. It's not easy, but it's necessary. The road to growth is paved with discomfort, and at the end of that road, we find the rewards of having become stronger, more skilled, and more confident than before. We all dream of success, whether it's building a successful career, starting a business, or achieving personal goals. The idea of success can be a powerful motivator. But despite these dreams, we often hesitate to take the risks needed to reach them. The fear of failure can hold us back, even when we know that without taking risks, success is unlikely. Imagine a person who wants to start a business. They have an idea that they're passionate about, and they can see how it could succeed. They dream of being their own boss, having the freedom to create something of their own, and reaping the rewards of their hard work. But as soon as they start thinking about taking the first steps, doubt creeps in. What if the business fails? What if no one buys their product or service? What if they lose all their money? The fear of failure paralyzes them, and despite their dreams, they can't bring themselves to take action. The desire for success is strong, but the fear of failure keeps them stuck. The same fear can be seen in everyday situations. Think about someone who wants to apply for a new job. They see a position they would love, one that could take their career to the next level, but then may start thinking about the possible outcomes. What if they don't get the job? What if they're not good enough for the role? What if they fail in the interview? These fears are powerful, and they stop many people from even trying. The desire for success is overshadowed by the fear of failure. In the end, they don't apply, missing out on the chance to move forward. Even in smaller aspects of life, this fear can stop us from moving ahead. Maybe someone has an idea for a creative project, a painting, a novel, or a music album. They dream of sharing their work with the world, but the thought of putting it out there and facing criticism scares them. They worry about rejection, about people not liking what they've created, or about failing to live up to their own standards. These fears prevent them from taking the first step, and the dream of success remains just that, a dream. The desire for success often feels like a distant, almost unattainable goal. It can seem like something reserved for people who are braver, luckier, or more capable. But the reality is that success usually requires risk. It requires stepping into the unknown and embracing the possibility of failure. But that's where many of us get stuck. The fear of failure makes us hesitate. It makes us question our abilities and wonder if we're really cut out for the challenges that come with success. Take, for example, a person considering a career change. They've been in their current job for years, and while it's stable, they feel unfulfilled. They dream of doing something else, something that excites them, but the idea of starting over feels daunting. They fear that they won't succeed in the new field, that they'll struggle, and that their efforts will be wasted. The desire for success in a new career is strong, but the fear of failure keeps them tied to their current job. It's easier to stay where they are, even if it doesn't bring them happiness, than to risk failure in pursuit of something that might bring greater satisfaction. Fear of failure can also make us overly cautious. We might plan every detail, hoping to eliminate any possibility of failure. But this often leads to overthinking and inaction. The more we focus on the potential for failure, the less we're willing to take risks. This can create a cycle where we feel stuck, unsure of how to move forward. The desire for success is still there, but it becomes overshadowed by the need to protect ourselves from failure. We want to avoid the discomfort of failure so much that we never take the chance to succeed. One of the main reasons people fear failure is the uncertainty that comes with it. Success feels like something we can control, something we can work toward and achieve with effort. Failure, on the other hand, feels unpredictable. We can't control how others will react or how things will unfold. We can only control our own actions. But even then, success is never guaranteed. That uncertainty can be uncomfortable. It's much easier to stay where things feel familiar and predictable, even if it means sacrificing the chance for greater success. The fear of failure also often comes from a fear of judgment. We worry about how others will see us if we fail. Will they think less of us? Will they see us as incompetent or incapable? This fear can be especially strong in public settings, like when we put our work, our ideas, or ourselves in the spotlight. Whether it's a business pitch, a creative project, or an interview, putting ourselves out there makes us vulnerable to criticism. The thought of being judged or ridiculed can stop us from even trying. The desire for success might be there, but the fear of being judged for failing often outweighs the drive to take that first step. But what many people fail to realize is that failure is often a necessary part of success. Every successful person has faced failure at some point. Failure doesn't mean that we're not good enough. It simply means that we didn't get it right this time. Failure is an opportunity to learn, to grow, and to improve. Each failure brings us closer to success because it teaches us something valuable. But without taking risks, without putting ourselves in situations where failure is a possibility, we can't grow, we can't learn, we can't move forward. When we let fear of failure control us, we hold ourselves back from achieving what we really want. The desire for success is often more powerful than we give it credit for, but it can only drive us so far if we don't take the steps necessary to reach our goals. The fear of failure may never completely disappear, but we can learn to manage it. By recognizing that failure is part of the process, we can reduce its hold on us. Instead of seeing failure as something to avoid at all costs, we can see it as a stepping stone to success. The desire for success can only become reality when we are willing to face the fear of failure and move forward anyway. We often hear about the value of independence. It's a trait that many of us admire, a sign of strength and self-sufficiency. We're taught to be self-reliant, to stand on our own 2 feet, and to make our own way in the world. Independence feels like freedom. It's the ability to make our own choices, live by our own rules, and not have to depend on anyone else. Yet, despite our deep appreciation for independence, we also rely on others in countless ways. Whether we want to admit it or not, we all need support, guidance, and connection. Consider a person who moves away to start a new job in a different city. They may pride themselves on making it on their own. They live alone, manage their finances, and make decisions without needing anyone's input. At first, this independence feels empowering. They have the freedom to do what they want without anyone telling them what to do. But over time, the challenges of being alone start to show. They might miss family gatherings or feel the weight of making tough decisions without the comfort of others to turn to. Even though they are physically independent, the emotional weight of isolation can start to feel heavy. This person may find themselves reaching out to friends or family for advice. They may ask colleagues for guidance at work or turn to a mentor for help with career decisions. Independence doesn't mean doing everything alone. It means being able to stand on your own, but also knowing when to lean on others. We all need help at different points in our lives. Independence can't fully shield us from the need for human connection and support. Think about a mother who decides to raise her child alone. She might want to be seen as strong and capable. She handles the day-to-day tasks, takes care of the child's needs, and manages everything herself. In many ways, she's independent. But the truth is, raising a child is a huge responsibility, and even the most self-sufficient people can't do it alone. She may ask for help from family members, whether it's a parent to watch the child for a few hours or a friend to offer advice. She might join parenting groups to connect with others in similar situations. The mother is still an independent person, but she relies on others for support, encouragement, and shared experience. She isn't weak for asking for help. She's human. Independence is important, but interdependence often plays a bigger role in achieving long-term success and well-being. At work, the value of interdependence is clear. No matter how skilled or capable a person is, they can't do everything themselves. A project might require input from different departments or teamwork to meet deadlines. Even if one person does most of the work, they still rely on others for feedback, resources, or expertise. Think of a doctor who works in a hospital. They may be the expert in treating patients, but they depend on nurses, technicians, and specialists for a complete treatment plan. Without the teamwork of everyone involved, the patient's care would suffer. In the workplace, independence allows us to handle our own responsibilities, but interdependence allows us to succeed in bigger, more complex tasks. Even in our social lives, we often crave independence, but find ourselves turning to others for connection and understanding. A person may choose to live alone, thinking that solitude will bring peace and fulfillment. Yet, over time, they may realize that while they enjoy the quiet moments, they miss the sense of community and shared experiences that come with relationships. They may reach out to friends, make plans to meet family, or seek out new social circles. In these moments, we are reminded that even the most independent people need others to fill the gaps that independence can't fully satisfy. The human need for connection, for understanding, and for shared experiences is hard to ignore. Our society values independence, especially in cultures that emphasize individual achievement and self-sufficiency. We are told that we should be able to take care of ourselves, solve our problems, and achieve our goals on our own. Yet, this emphasis on independence can sometimes lead us to overlook the importance of interdependence. We may believe that asking for help or relying on others is a sign of weakness, but that couldn't be further from the truth. In reality, depending on others can make us stronger. It allows us to learn from the experiences of those around us, to share the burden of life's challenges, and to build relationships that make us feel supported and understood. Consider a student who is trying to learn a new subject. At first, they might struggle on their own, trying to figure things out through textbooks or online resources. But they might eventually realize that they need a teacher's guidance or a study group to help clarify difficult concepts. The student is still responsible for their own learning, but by depending on others, they can deepen their understanding and improve their skills more quickly. In this case, interdependence doesn't diminish their independence, it enhances it. It allows them to build a foundation that helps them grow in ways they couldn't on their own. Even in our health, independence and interdependence play roles. We might be independent when it comes to managing our exercise routine or sticking to a healthy diet. But when we face illness, we often rely on doctors, therapists, or family members for help. A person recovering from surgery might be independent in many aspects of their life, but will need assistance with tasks like meal preparation or transportation during their recovery. Seeking help during times of weakness doesn't mean we're not strong. It means we're accepting the fact that we need others to help us through tough times. There's a balance between independence and interdependence, and both are essential for leading a fulfilling life. Independence allows us to maintain a sense of control and self-respect, while interdependence reminds us that we are all connected and that it's okay to seek support. We may cherish the freedom that independence offers, but we can't ignore the fact that we are social creatures. Our lives are enriched by the relationships we form and the help we give and receive. By recognizing the value of interdependence, we can build stronger, more supportive connections with the people around us and create a sense of community that helps everyone thrive. We all crave security. It's a natural desire to seek stability, comfort, and safety in our lives. Security gives us a sense of control and protection. We work hard to create secure jobs, stable relationships, and comfortable living situations. We build routines that help us feel safe, and we often find peace in knowing that things are predictable. Yet, as much as we seek security, change is inevitable. Life constantly shifts, and often change is the key to progress. It challenges us, pushes us out of our comfort zones, and forces us to adapt. Take, for example, someone who has been working in the same job for many years. The job is stable, and the person knows exactly what to expect each day. They've built a life around the security this job provides. They feel safe because they know the routines and the expectations. But over time, they may begin to feel stagnant. Their skills stop growing, and the work becomes routine. At some point, the job may start to feel like a cage, even though it provides the security they desire. If they stay in this position for too long, they risk missing out on new opportunities. Change, whether that's taking on a new role or moving to a different company, can feel scary because it disrupts the security they've worked hard to establish. But without change, there is no growth. The job may provide stability, but it won't bring progress. Consider someone who is in a long-term relationship. They have built a secure life with their partner, and their routines are comfortable. They know each other well and have established a rhythm that feels safe. But what happens when one person begins to feel like they need something more? Maybe they want to grow in a different direction or explore new interests. The security of the relationship may be tested. Change in relationships, whether it's changing roles or even making difficult decisions, can feel uncomfortable. People fear the unknown, and the thought of losing the security of a familiar partnership can be overwhelming. But without the willingness to change, relationships can stagnate. People grow, and if they don't change together, they may eventually drift apart. While security in a relationship is important, change is often what keeps it alive, helping both people adapt and grow together. Even in our personal lives, we often avoid change because it disrupts the security we've built. People may stick to familiar routines or resist new experiences because they fear the uncertainty that comes with change. For instance, someone may feel comfortable living in the same town, surrounded by familiar faces and places. The thought of moving to a new city with new people and new challenges may seem daunting. Yet, that change could bring new opportunities for personal growth, new friendships, and new experiences that couldn't have been found by staying in the same place. Security feels good in the moment, but change is often where the growth happens. Change isn't always a choice. Life doesn't always allow us to stay in our secure bubble. Illness, financial struggles, or unexpected events can force change on us. While these changes may feel overwhelming or even frightening at first, they often lead to progress in unexpected ways. Take the example of someone who suddenly loses their job. The loss of income brings an immediate sense of insecurity and fear. But in the process of navigating this change, they may discover new career paths, learn new skills, or take risks they wouldn't have considered otherwise. In this way, change, though uncomfortable, can lead to progress that would not have been possible if everything had stayed the same. Similarly, the world around us is constantly changing. Technology advances, society evolves, and industries shift. People who hold tightly to the security of the past can find themselves left behind. Consider someone who has worked in a traditional industry like print journalism for many years. The rise of digital media and online news outlets brings change, and many traditional newspapers close or drastically change their format. The person who resists adapting to this change may find it difficult to stay relevant in their career. But those who embrace change, who learn new skills, adapt to new ways of working, and seek out opportunities in emerging fields, are often the ones who move forward. Change may be uncomfortable, but it can also be the source of new beginnings, new growth, and new success. The need for security often keeps us from making these changes. We cling to what we know because it feels safe, but in doing so, we limit our potential. Change is uncomfortable, yes, but it's also necessary for growth. Without change, we become stagnant. The world moves forward, and if we remain rooted in our desire for security, we may miss the opportunities that come with adapting to new circumstances. Change doesn't mean abandoning security, but it does mean being open to new ways of thinking, new ways of working, and new paths forward. Take, for instance, a person who feels comfortable in their career, but has always dreamed of starting their own business. The stability of their job is secure, but they feel unfulfilled. The fear of leaving the known for the unknown holds them back. But if they never take the risk of starting that business, they will never know what could have been. Change requires stepping into the unknown, but it is often in that space that new ideas, new solutions, and new successes are found. Even in personal growth, we see the tension between security and change. It's easy to stay in a familiar routine where everything feels predictable. But if we only stick to what's comfortable, we limit our ability to grow as individuals. Personal growth often means challenging ourselves to try new things, to take on new challenges, and to step outside our comfort zones. It might mean taking a class, learning a new skill, or starting a new hobby. These changes, though small, push us to expand our abilities and learn more about ourselves. Security might feel comforting in the moment, but it's the willingness to change that allows us to become better, stronger, and more adaptable. The fear of change is natural. It's easy to want to hold on to what feels safe and secure, but without change, we risk becoming stuck, unable to move forward. Change is often the key to progress. It allows us to adapt to new situations, learn from new experiences, and become better versions of ourselves. Security is important, but change is what keeps life moving, keeps us growing, and helps us reach new heights. Ambition is often seen as the force that drives us forward. It pushes us to work harder, achieve more, and aim for bigger goals. It's the desire to improve, to reach higher, and to be better than we were yesterday. Ambition keeps us moving, striving, and often searching for more. But at the same time, there's another side to life: contentment. Contentment brings peace, a sense of fulfillment, and the ability to be happy with what we have. It doesn't require constant striving or reaching for the next goal. Both ambition and contentment have their place in our lives, but sometimes they seem to be in conflict with each other. Take a person who works tirelessly to climb the corporate ladder. They're ambitious and have clear goals: promotion after promotion, a higher salary, more recognition. Every milestone reached is celebrated, but as soon as they hit one, another goal appears. There's always more to achieve, more to prove. At first, this drive feels exciting. It gives them purpose, direction, and motivation. But over time, the pressure of constant striving can take a toll. They may start to feel exhausted, disconnected from loved ones, or even lose sight of the reasons they started chasing success in the first place. Ambition has kept them moving, but it hasn't necessarily brought them lasting fulfillment. On the other hand, there's someone who lives a more content life. They don't necessarily seek the same level of achievement. They have a steady job, a comfortable home, and close relationships. They are happy with what they have and find peace in their daily routines. They may not have the same career goals or financial aspirations as the ambitious person, but they feel secure and fulfilled. They enjoy their life, knowing that they've created something meaningful without constantly pushing for more. This contentment offers a kind of peace that ambition sometimes can't. At first glance, ambition and contentment seem to be opposites. Ambition is about the future, the next step, the next opportunity. It's about growth and improvement. Contentment, however, is about the present. It's about appreciating what is and finding joy in the moment. The ambitious person is always looking ahead, while the content person is often fully engaged in the here and now. But that doesn't mean they can't coexist. In fact, a balance between ambition and contentment can bring a more meaningful and fulfilling life. Consider someone who is working hard to start their own business. They are ambitious, driven, and focused on making their business a success. But at the same time, they make sure to appreciate the small victories along the way, the clients they gain, the progress they make, and the joy of seeing their hard work pay off. They aren't just chasing the end result. They're enjoying the process, the growth, and the learning that comes with it. Their ambition pushes them to move forward, but their contentment allows them to feel a sense of satisfaction even before reaching the final goal. In relationships, ambition and contentment also play a role. Take a couple that has been together for many years. They both have goals, whether it's career advancement, traveling the world, or learning new skills. But they also make time for simple moments of happiness, shared meals, quiet evenings at home, and meaningful conversations. Their ambitions drive them to improve their lives, but their contentment with each other and with the life they've built together brings them peace. They don't need to be constantly striving for something bigger or better. Instead, they find joy in what they already have, in the companionship and love they share. It's easy to think that contentment means settling for less, or that ambition means always wanting more. But that's not necessarily true. Contentment doesn't mean giving up on dreams or goals. It simply means finding peace with where you are while still working toward the future. Similarly, ambition doesn't have to lead to dissatisfaction. It can be the driving force behind personal growth and improvement, while also allowing room for moments of peace and fulfillment. The key is to find a balance between the two. The challenge comes when ambition leads to a constant sense of wanting more, without ever feeling satisfied. This can happen when we tie our happiness solely to our achievements. If we only feel successful when we reach a certain milestone, we can easily become trapped in a cycle of endless striving. We may achieve one goal, but then immediately set our sights on the next. This cycle can be exhausting and leave us feeling unfulfilled, even after reaching what we once thought would bring us happiness. In contrast, contentment brings a different kind of satisfaction. It's about appreciating what you have right now, without waiting for the next achievement to bring you happiness. It's about recognizing that life is made up of small moments, those quiet times, the simple joys, and the relationships we build that often bring the most fulfillment. But contentment doesn't mean you stop growing. It means you're able to find peace in the journey, without always feeling the need to rush ahead. Sometimes, we may feel torn between ambition and contentment. We wonder if we should keep pushing for more, or if we should be happy with what we already have. There's no easy answer, as it depends on the person and the situation. However, the key is to understand that both ambition and contentment have their own value. Ambition can drive us to achieve things we never thought possible, while contentment can help us appreciate the things we already have. Together, they create a fuller, richer life. Take someone who is pursuing a career in the arts. Their ambition drives them to create and share their work with the world. They push themselves to improve, to experiment, and to innovate, but at the same time, they find contentment in the act of creating itself. Whether or not they achieve widespread recognition, they enjoy the process of making something from nothing, and that joy brings them fulfillment, regardless of the outcome. Their ambition fuels their growth, but their contentment gives them the peace to enjoy the journey, rather than only focusing on the end result. Ultimately, ambition can be a powerful motivator, but contentment brings balance. The desire to improve, to grow, and to achieve is important, but it's equally important to recognize the value of the present moment and the satisfaction that comes with it. Finding harmony between ambition and contentment is not always easy, but when we can embrace both, we create a life that is not only driven by purpose, but also filled with peace and fulfillment. We often strive for perfection, whether it's in our work, relationships, or personal lives. The idea of being perfect can feel like an ideal to reach for. Perfection promises success, approval, and the feeling that everything is just right. It can be the standard we hold ourselves to, a way to measure progress, and the goal we think we need to attain to feel fulfilled. Yet, no matter how hard we try, none of us can ever achieve perfection. We are all inherently flawed and imperfect, and that imperfection is often what makes us human. Consider someone who is preparing for an important presentation at work. They rehearse over and over, making sure every word is perfectly chosen, every gesture is calculated, and every slide is in place. They aim to deliver the perfect presentation, thinking that anything less will make them seem unprepared or incompetent. The pressure to be flawless can be overwhelming. They may even spend hours fine-tuning details that most people wouldn't notice, all in an attempt to reach perfection. But when the day of the presentation arrives, despite their best efforts, something doesn't go as planned. Maybe they forget a key point or their computer crashes. In that moment, perfection slips away. They might feel like they've failed, even though their audience might not have even noticed the minor flaws. This moment highlights an important truth. Perfection is often an illusion. Despite our best efforts, It's impossible to control every aspect, and imperfection is inevitable. We all know the feeling of setting high standards for ourselves. It's easy to get caught up in the idea that if we just do things perfectly, we will be more successful, more loved, and more respected. But the reality is that perfection can be a heavy burden. It can prevent us from taking risks, trying new things, or embracing the messy, imperfect parts of life. The desire for perfection can keep us stuck, paralyzed by the fear that anything less than flawless will be a failure. Take the example of someone who is learning a new skill, like playing the guitar. At first, they may be excited to play and eager to learn, but soon they become frustrated. Every wrong note or missed chord feels like a setback. They may start to think that unless they can play perfectly, they shouldn't even try. The pressure to be flawless can take away the joy of learning, making it feel more like a chore. But the truth is, imperfection is part of the learning process. Every mistake is an opportunity to improve. It's the small flaws, the moments of struggle, that lead to progress. Without the willingness to make mistakes, to accept imperfection, growth would be impossible. In our relationships, the desire for perfection can also be damaging. We all have expectations for how others should behave or how we should be treated. We may want our relationships to be perfect, with no misunderstandings or disagreements, but this ideal is unrealistic. Every relationship, no matter how close, involves imperfections. People have different opinions, emotions, and ways of communicating. There will be moments of conflict, miscommunication, and hurt, but it's through these imperfections that relationships deepen. It's the ability to work through difficulties, to accept each other's flaws, and to grow together that makes relationships meaningful. Trying to make everything perfect can cause unnecessary stress, and it can prevent us from embracing the beauty of what is real. Sometimes, the pursuit of perfection stems from an inner desire for control. We try to perfect our surroundings, our actions, or even our appearances, believing that if everything is just right, we will be able to control our outcomes. But life is unpredictable. Things don't always go the way we expect, no matter how hard we try to plan. A person may spend years crafting the perfect career, the perfect lifestyle, or the perfect image, only to find that these efforts don't bring the fulfillment they imagined. Perfection doesn't guarantee happiness or success. It's the ability to adapt, to learn from failure, and to embrace the imperfections along the way that often leads to the most meaningful experiences. Think about a chef who spends years perfecting their cooking skills. They know how to create dishes that are technically flawless, but when they share their food with others, the joy comes not from the perfection of the dish, but from the shared experience of eating together. The little mistakes, the unexpected flavors, and even the messiness of the process can create a deeper connection than the pursuit of perfection ever could. The imperfections make the experience more human, more real. It's in the mistakes that we find the opportunity to connect with others and create something truly meaningful. Even when it comes to our own sense of self, the desire for perfection can lead to dissatisfaction. Many of us are taught to strive for an ideal version of ourselves, whether it's in terms of our appearance, our achievements, or our behavior. We may think that once we reach this ideal, we'll be happy. But the truth is, perfection is often a moving target. What we consider perfect today may change tomorrow. Trying to live up to an impossible standard can lead to frustration and self-doubt. It can make us feel like we are never enough, no matter what we accomplish. But accepting our flaws, embracing our imperfections, and understanding that we are worthy as we are can bring a sense of peace and fulfillment that perfection never will. It's easy to get caught in the cycle of striving for perfection, but the reality is that imperfection is a natural part of life. It's what makes us human. We all have flaws, And it's these flaws that make us unique. It's through imperfection that we learn, grow, and experience life fully. Perfection can be a goal, but it's important to remember that the pursuit of it shouldn't overshadow the joy of the journey. Embracing imperfection allows us to be more authentic, more compassionate, and more connected to others. In the end, perfection isn't what makes life meaningful. It's the imperfections, the mistakes, the failures, the rough edges that shape who we are and how we relate to the world around us. Trying to be perfect can prevent us from truly living. Embracing imperfection allows us to experience life as it is, full of ups and downs, successes and failures, beauty and flaws. It's these imperfections that make life rich and worth living. We often find ourselves torn between two forces, logic and emotion. Our logical mind relies on reasoning, facts, and clear analysis to guide our decisions. Emotion, on the other hand, moves us in ways that are harder to explain, often pulling us in directions that don't always make sense in the light of reason. This inner conflict creates contradictions in how we approach decisions. At times, our emotions feel too strong to ignore, while other times, logic seems like the only reliable guide. Take, for example, someone considering a major career change. Their logical side looks at the facts. There's a stable job with benefits, a clear path to advancement, and a predictable income. Everything about the situation says it's a safe, smart choice. But emotionally, they feel unfulfilled in their current position. They're bored, frustrated, and longing for something more meaningful. Their heart tells them to take the leap, to follow their passion and leave behind the comfort of stability. But the logical part of their brain holds them back, warning them about the risks, loss of income, uncertainty about the future, and the potential of making a mistake. The conflict between these two parts of themselves leaves them stuck, unsure whether to follow their emotions or stick to a safer, more logical path. This kind of inner contradiction isn't rare. It happens when our emotions lead us to want something that doesn't align with what we believe is the right or practical choice. Imagine a person in a relationship where they feel deep emotional attachment to their partner. They love them, but they also see patterns of behavior that are unhealthy. The logical side of their mind can clearly see that the relationship isn't serving them, and it suggests that they should walk away for their own well-being. But their emotions are strong. Love, hope, and attachment cloud their judgment. Their emotional instincts push them to stay, even when they know logically that it may not be the best choice for them. In this case, logic tells them one thing, but emotion pulls them in another direction, creating a painful tug-of-war. Even in everyday situations, this conflict between emotion and logic can cause stress. Consider someone deciding whether to buy a new car. The logical side would say, "Can I afford it? What are the long-term costs? Is this really necessary?" It might lead to choosing a more economical, sensible option. But emotionally, the idea of driving a shiny, new car might feel like a reward, an expression of success, or simply something that would make them happy in the moment. Emotion doesn't consider the practical side. It's driven by desire, and sometimes that desire overrides logic. The decision-making process becomes complicated because the emotional appeal doesn't align with the rational considerations. This conflict doesn't just happen in big decisions. It can even show up in the small, everyday choices we make. Think of a person who is trying to get healthier. They might logically know that eating nutritious food and exercising regularly are important for their well-being. But when it comes time to make a choice, their emotions might take over. They might crave comfort food, or they might feel too tired to exercise, even though their logical mind knows that working out will make them feel better in the long run. The emotional need for comfort, relaxation, or a temporary escape from stress can conflict with the logical understanding of what's best for their health. This back and forth creates inner tension and often leads to decisions that don't align with what we logically know we should do. What often makes this inner conflict so challenging is that emotions don't follow a clear, rational path. They can be unpredictable, irrational, and intense. Logic, by contrast, provides structure. It offers clear steps and helps us see the consequences of our actions. Logic tells us to stick to a budget, to wait for the right opportunity, and to avoid impulse decisions. Emotions, however, can sweep us up in moments of joy, fear, anger, or desire, leading us to act in ways that might not make sense on paper. For example, when a person is feeling lonely, they may make an impulsive decision to reach out to someone who isn't good for them, even though they know logically it might lead to more pain. The emotional drive for connection can easily outweigh the logical reasons to stay away. But while emotion can sometimes cloud judgment, it's important to remember that it's not always a bad thing. Emotion can provide valuable insight into our true desires and needs. It can tell us what we care about most, what makes us happy, and what we fear. These feelings are a part of who we are, and ignoring them completely can lead to decisions that are disconnected from our inner selves. A person who follows only logic, never acknowledging their emotions, may find themselves stuck in a life that looks good on paper but doesn't bring them joy or fulfillment. They may make practical decisions that lead to success, but without emotional satisfaction, they may feel empty or disconnected. Balancing logic and emotion can be difficult, but it's often the key to making better decisions. Logic helps us weigh the facts, consider risks, and understand consequences. Emotion helps us understand what we value, what we need, and what we truly want. The best decisions often come when both parts of us are considered. A person might make a career change that is a risk financially, but also brings emotional fulfillment. Another person might stay in a difficult relationship, not because it makes sense logically, but because they value emotional connection and are willing to work through the difficulties. However, the challenge comes when the emotional drive to act immediately clashes with the logical need to think things through. The immediate emotional satisfaction of buying something new, for example, might feel good in the moment, but can later lead to regret when the financial reality sets in. Similarly, the emotional urge to quit a job in frustration can be tempered by the logical understanding that making such a decision in haste might bring more harm than good. This constant tug-of-war between emotion and logic doesn't necessarily have an easy solution. At times, it may be better to follow reason, especially when emotions are clouding judgment. At other times, trusting emotions may lead to a more fulfilling, authentic life. The key is finding a balance, recognizing when to listen to each side, and being aware of how one might be influencing the other. Sometimes, it's helpful to take a step back and allow time for both logic and emotion to settle. Making decisions when emotions are running high may not always lead to the best outcomes. Similarly, overanalyzing a situation with too much logic can lead to missed opportunities for growth or happiness. It's in the moments of reflection, where both emotion and logic can be considered together, that we often find the clearest path forward. We live in a world that places high value on material wealth. From a young age, we're taught to pursue success through what we own. Whether it's a nice house, a luxury car, or the latest gadgets, material wealth is often seen as the key to happiness. We work hard, save, and strive to accumulate things that show we've made it. But as much as we chase after more possessions, there's a quiet voice that suggests something else might be missing. True happiness, it seems, doesn't always come from what we own. It often comes from within. Consider a person who has worked their whole life to accumulate wealth. They've built a successful business, bought a big house, and filled it with expensive items. At first, the sense of accomplishment is satisfying. The items they own represent their hard work, their ambition, and their achievements. But after a while, they begin to notice something. despite all they've gained, they don't feel the deep satisfaction they expected. The excitement of buying new things fades quickly. The house, once a symbol of success, starts to feel more like a place to maintain than a place of comfort. They might find themselves constantly thinking about the next big purchase, the next business deal, or the next thing that will mark their progress. Yet, the deeper sense of happiness they were hoping for seems elusive. In their pursuit of material wealth, they may have overlooked something that could offer them lasting peace, spiritual fulfillment. For another person, the pursuit of inner peace or spiritual growth might look very different. They might not be focused on accumulating wealth, but instead seek fulfillment through personal growth, meditation, or a connection with something greater than themselves. Their life may be simpler, with fewer material possessions, but they find joy in the quiet moments, in the relationships they build, and in the time they spend reflecting on what matters most. They feel a sense of purpose and contentment that isn't tied to what they own. While they may not have the same outward signs of success, their inner peace often brings them a deeper sense of happiness. The contrast between material wealth and spiritual fulfillment becomes clearer when we think about the difference in how we experience these two aspects of life. Material wealth can bring short-term satisfaction. Buying something new or achieving a financial goal feels rewarding in the moment, but that feeling tends to wear off quickly. We may be thrilled when we get something we've wanted for a long time, but soon it becomes just another item in our collection. There's always something more to strive for, and that cycle can feel endless. The more we acquire, the more we find ourselves wanting. In this way, material wealth often comes with the burden of desire. It gives us what we want now, but rarely provides lasting happiness. On the other hand, spiritual fulfillment doesn't rely on the accumulation of things. It's about finding peace in the present moment, understanding our deeper values, and connecting with something beyond the material world. It might involve personal growth, learning to let go of attachments, or developing a sense of gratitude for what we already have. Spiritual fulfillment is often about inner contentment rather than external accomplishments. It's not about achieving the next big thing, but about being at peace with where we are right now. Take the example of a person who has reached a high level of material success. They have all the things that many people dream of: wealth, status, and luxury. But despite all this, they might feel empty inside. The constant pursuit of more has led to exhaustion and stress, and they find little joy in the things they've accumulated. Meanwhile, someone who has spent years focusing on their spiritual well-being may find joy in the simplicity of life. They spend time with loved ones, practice mindfulness, and invest in their personal growth. While they might not have the same material wealth, they feel a sense of peace that the other person is still chasing. The contrast between the two highlights that happiness isn't necessarily found in what we own, but in how we relate to the world around us. There's also the matter of how we measure success. In the material world, success is often defined by what we have, how much money we earn, how big our house is, or how well known we are. These are tangible markers that can be seen and measured. But when it comes to spiritual fulfillment, success is less about external achievements and more about internal growth. It's about feeling at peace with ourselves, developing a sense of purpose, and finding joy in the simple things. The person who has mastered the art of living simply may have a sense of fulfillment that cannot be measured by the usual standards of wealth and status. Consider someone who has spent years accumulating wealth but feels disconnected from their loved ones. They may spend long hours at work, focused on financial success, but neglect the relationships that truly matter. Over time, they may begin to realize that the money they've earned hasn't brought them the deep connections they crave. The family gatherings, and meaningful conversations, the quiet moments of connection. These are the things that truly bring them joy. Material wealth, in this case, didn't offer the fulfillment they expected. It's only through focusing on relationships and nurturing their inner life that they start to feel truly happy. At the same time, spiritual fulfillment doesn't mean rejecting material wealth altogether. It's not about shunning success or possessions. It's about understanding that material things are not the ultimate source of happiness. Spiritual fulfillment is about cultivating a sense of peace, regardless of external circumstances. A person who focuses on spiritual growth may still enjoy material comforts, but they are less attached to them. They are content with what they have, not because they have a lot, but because they understand the deeper value of life beyond possessions. It's easy to fall into the trap of thinking that more wealth will bring more happiness, but this belief can often lead to dissatisfaction. We accumulate material things in an effort to feel secure, successful, or happy. But when the excitement of ownership fades, we're left wanting more. Spiritual fulfillment, on the other hand, can bring lasting peace because it's not dependent on external factors. It's rooted in our inner sense of purpose, our ability to connect with others, and our understanding of what truly matters in life. Material wealth can certainly provide comfort and convenience, but it often falls short in delivering true happiness. Spiritual fulfillment, by contrast, offers a deeper sense of peace and contentment, grounded in our inner selves rather than in the things we own. Both have value, but when we focus too much on material wealth, we can miss the richness of life that comes from spiritual growth. We all need social connection. Human beings are naturally social creatures. We seek companionship, friendship, and the sense of belonging that comes from interacting with others. Whether it's through family, friends, or colleagues, social interaction plays a key role in our emotional well-being. Yet despite our need for connection, there are times when we crave solitude. The desire for alone time can feel just as strong, especially after a long day of social interaction or when life feels overwhelming. This creates a tension between the need for social connection and the desire for peace and solitude. Take a person who has been surrounded by people all day, at work, at social events, or in the hustle and bustle of daily life. By the time they get home, they may feel mentally drained. The thought of having another conversation or being around others might feel exhausting. They long for a few quiet moments to themselves. They might retreat to their room, shut the door, and savor the silence. The solitude brings peace, offering them the chance to recharge. They find comfort in being alone, in not having to meet anyone else's expectations or respond to anyone's needs. The quiet allows them to reflect, think, and regain their energy. At the same time, this same person may deeply value the relationships in their life. They enjoy the moments spent with family and friends, the laughter shared over a meal, or the support they receive during tough times. They know that social connections are essential for their happiness. Being around people gives them a sense of purpose, a feeling of connection that can't be found in isolation. Yet the balance between socializing and spending time alone can sometimes feel difficult to maintain. While social interactions bring joy, they can also feel draining when they come too often or too intensely. The need for alone time often creeps in, creating a push and pull between these two desires. This tension between social connection and solitude is something many people experience. We crave the company of others, yet we also need space to breathe and think. Sometimes the desire for alone time is not about avoiding others, but about finding balance. A person who enjoys socializing might find that after a long period of social interaction, they need time to recalibrate. It's not that they don't value the relationships in their life, but they recognize that without time to themselves, they might lose the energy to fully enjoy those relationships. On the flip side, someone who is naturally more introverted might find socializing exhausting even if they care deeply about the people in their life. They might enjoy spending time with close friends or family, but need more alone time to feel centered. The constant demands of social engagement can feel overwhelming for them, leaving them yearning for the quiet comfort of solitude. For these individuals, alone time isn't about avoiding others. It's about finding the mental and emotional space they need to process, recharge, and find peace. There's also the pressure that can come with social expectations. In a world where social media and constant communication have become the norm, it's easy to feel like we always need to be on. We're expected to respond quickly to messages, attend gatherings, and be available for others. While these interactions can be fulfilling, they can also add to the sense of burnout. The constant demand for attention and engagement can make solitude feel like a much-needed escape. It's during these times that the need for alone time becomes even more pronounced. Solitude, in this case, becomes a refuge, a chance to disconnect from the external world and reconnect with oneself. Yet, even when we retreat into solitude, there can still be a sense of longing for connection. It's not that we want to be alone all the time, but we often seek moments of silence to reflect on our lives and our relationships. The balance between these two needs is delicate. Too much time spent alone can lead to feelings of isolation, while too much time spent with others can lead to burnout. Understanding when we need solitude and when we need social interaction is key to maintaining emotional well-being. This push and pull between wanting to be with others and needing time alone can sometimes create inner conflict. A person might feel guilty for wanting time alone, especially if they know their friends or family are counting on their company. They may worry that by seeking solitude, they're letting others down or pulling away. On the other hand, someone might feel lonely or disconnected if they haven't had enough meaningful social interaction. The tension can lead to feelings of dissatisfaction, as if neither need is fully met. Consider a person who spends most of their time with a busy social group. They enjoy the companionship, but find that they are losing touch with themselves in the process. They start to feel like they're constantly reacting to others' needs rather than focusing on their own. The time they used to spend reflecting or pursuing their own hobbies is now filled with social obligations. Over time, they might begin to feel a sense of emptiness, not because the social connections aren't valuable, but because they haven't allowed themselves the space to be alone and recharge. They may need to take a step back, to find moments of solitude in order to come back to their relationships with renewed energy and a clearer sense of self. The need for social connection and the desire for alone time can also change depending on life stages or circumstances. A person might crave more social interaction when they're feeling lonely or disconnected from others, seeking comfort in the company of friends or family. But during times of stress, work pressure, or personal reflection, the desire for solitude may become stronger. The key is recognizing that both needs are valid and finding ways to honor them in a healthy balance. For example, after a stressful week of work and social commitments, a person might choose to spend the weekend alone, engaging in quiet activities like reading or hiking. They might need this time to clear their head, reset, and regain their emotional balance. The solitude isn't about rejecting the need for social interaction. It's about ensuring they have the space to process their thoughts and emotions. Similarly, after a period of being alone, they might feel the pull of social connection again, eager to reconnect with friends and family and share experiences. It's important to understand that neither social connection nor alone time is inherently better than the other. They each serve a different purpose, and both are necessary for a well-rounded and fulfilling life. Social interactions nourish our sense of belonging and provide emotional support, while solitude allows us to recharge, reflect, and grow. The key is learning to recognize when one is needed more than the other and giving ourselves permission to honor that need without guilt. Life is about finding a balance, navigating the tension between social connection and the desire for solitude in a way that supports our mental and emotional health. By listening to ourselves and respecting both needs, we can create a life that feels fulfilling, rich with connection, and also abundant in peace and reflection. Change is something most people fear. It shakes up the familiar, challenges what we know, and brings uncertainty into our lives. Yet, despite this fear, we also crave progress. We want to grow, improve, and move forward in life. The desire for progress often pushes us to take steps toward change, even though change can feel unsettling. This creates a contradiction. While we fear change, we also understand that it is necessary for progress. Think about someone in a job they've had for years. The work is steady and familiar. They know their colleagues, the routine is predictable, and the role feels safe. There's comfort in knowing exactly what to expect each day. But as time goes on, they start to feel stuck. They realize that they aren't learning anything new. Their skills are becoming outdated, and their potential for growth is limited. They may start to dream of a career change or a new opportunity, but the idea of making a move is intimidating. What if the new job isn't what they expect? What if they aren't good enough for the new role? The fear of stepping into the unknown holds them back, even though they know that making a change could lead to personal growth and progress. This fear of change often comes from the uncertainty it brings. Change is unpredictable. It's hard to know exactly how things will turn out. The security of the known, no matter how limiting, can seem safer than the potential risks of the unknown, but progress is rarely achieved without some level of change. If we don't challenge ourselves, try new things, or step outside of our comfort zones, we remain where we are, stuck in the same place, never growing. The very progress we desire requires embracing change, even when it feels uncomfortable. Consider someone who is trying to improve their physical health. They know that exercising and eating well are key to feeling better, but the idea of changing their routine is daunting. They might be used to sitting on the couch in the evenings, watching TV, and eating snacks. The thought of committing to regular workouts and changing their diet is a big adjustment, but they also know that if they want to feel better, they need to make those changes. They might fear that the effort won't pay off, or that they'll fail to stick with the new routine. Despite this fear, they know that without making these changes, they won't make progress toward their health goals. So they push through the discomfort of change, knowing it's the only way to move forward. In relationships too, the fear of change can hold us back from progress. People might stay in relationships that aren't fulfilling because the idea of leaving is scary. They fear the unknown, what life would look like without the person, how they'd handle the emotional impact, or whether they'd find someone else. The comfort of staying in a relationship, even a bad one, feels safer than making the change. Yet, in many cases, growth and personal progress come from stepping away from relationships that no longer serve us. We need to face the fear of change in order to move towards something better. Even on a smaller scale, we often resist change because of the discomfort it brings. Think of someone who has always done things a certain way, whether it's organizing their home, managing their finances, or approaching daily tasks. They may realize that their current way isn't as effective or efficient as it could be, but the thought of trying a new method feels overwhelming. The fear of failure, or the fear that the new way won't work, keeps them stuck in their old habits. But without making those changes, they won't progress. They'll continue doing things the same way, even if it doesn't lead to the results they want. This contradiction between the fear of change and the desire for progress is something everyone experiences. We know that in order to grow and achieve our goals, we have to change. Yet we often hesitate because of the discomfort and uncertainty that change brings. It's natural to feel this fear. Change disrupts our routines, asks us to adapt, and challenges our sense of control. But the fear of change shouldn't prevent us from pursuing the progress we seek. Instead, we need to learn how to manage that fear and take action despite it. Sometimes, the desire for progress is strong enough to outweigh the fear of change. Take someone who decides to go back to school later in life. The idea of being a student again, of returning to school, balancing studies with other responsibilities, and facing the challenge of learning new material can be intimidating. But the desire to progress in their career or to fulfill a lifelong dream of education outweighs the fear. They embrace the change despite the risks and uncertainty. This willingness to change, even in the face of fear, leads to growth and new opportunities. In many cases, fear of change is tied to the idea of failure. We fear that we won't succeed in the new situation, that the change won't lead to the desired outcome. This fear can make us hesitant to take the first step. However, it's important to remember that failure is a part of growth. Progress doesn't come from always getting it right. It comes from learning from mistakes, adapting, and trying again. The fear of failing at something new can be a powerful force, but it shouldn't stop us from pursuing the progress we desire. We can learn to embrace failure as a learning experience, as a necessary part of the process. The key to managing this tension between fear of change and the desire for progress is to take small steps. Change doesn't have to happen all at once. Breaking down a large, daunting change into smaller, manageable steps can make it feel less overwhelming. It allows us to take action without feeling paralyzed by fear. Instead of focusing on the entire process of change, we can focus on the next small step toward progress. Over time, these small steps add up, and before we know it, we've made significant progress without having to face the full weight of change all at once. Another important aspect of embracing change is understanding that it's often the only way to move forward. Without change, we stay in the same place, stuck in our old ways. Progress requires stepping into the unknown, taking risks, and adapting to new circumstances. The fear of change is a natural response to uncertainty, but we can't let it hold us back. In the end, it's through embracing change that we make the progress we seek. The desire for progress and the fear of change will always exist in tension. But by understanding that change is an essential part of growth, and by taking small steps toward the changes we want to see, we can manage that fear and move toward the progress we desire. Change may be uncomfortable, but it's often the key to getting where we want to go. We all have an ego. It's a natural part of being human. The ego drives us to seek recognition, to prove our worth, and to gain validation from others. Whether it's through accomplishments, titles, or praise, the ego pushes us to show the world who we are and what we can do. It seeks attention and often thrives on external approval. However, humility teaches us to let go of this self-centeredness. It reminds us that true fulfillment and growth come not from being praised, but from serving others and embracing a deeper sense of self-understanding. Imagine a person who works hard to achieve success in their career. They want recognition for their accomplishments. They strive for promotions, awards, and accolades that will affirm their abilities. When they receive praise, it feels good. It boosts their confidence and validates their hard work. The ego thrives in this environment as it seeks approval from others to feel important. But after the initial satisfaction wears off, they might still feel empty. The recognition, while momentarily rewarding, doesn't bring lasting fulfillment. In these moments, the ego can leave them wanting more, always seeking the next achievement, the next accolade, or the next moment of praise. On the other hand, humility offers a different approach. A humble person doesn't seek recognition in the same way. They still work hard and strive for excellence, but their motivation comes from a deeper place. They don't expect praise, and when they do receive it, they accept it gracefully without letting it define them. Humility teaches us to focus on the work itself rather than the recognition we might receive from it. It's about doing things, not for the applause, but because they are the right things to do. In this way, humility doesn't diminish ambition, but redirects it toward a greater purpose, to serve others, improve ourselves, and contribute meaningfully without constantly needing to be noticed for it. Consider the example of a leader in the workplace. A leader driven by ego might focus on gaining praise from their team or higher-ups. They want to be seen as the one with all the answers, the one in charge, and the one who makes the final decisions. Their ego can lead them to make decisions based on what will boost their status rather than what is best for the team. This can create a toxic environment where others feel undervalued or ignored, as the leader is more concerned with their own recognition than fostering collaboration and growth in others. A humble leader, on the other hand, knows that their role is to serve their team, not to elevate themselves. They recognize that leadership is about empowering others, making decisions that benefit the group, and accepting the responsibility that comes with it. A humble leader is willing to listen to their team, admit when they don't have all the answers, and share credit for successes. This doesn't mean they lack ambition or are not driven to succeed. It simply means that their motivation is not about seeking recognition for themselves, but about helping others achieve their best. In our personal lives, the tension between ego and humility can be just as present. We all want to be seen, to feel valued, and to have our contributions acknowledged. This is natural, but when we seek attention for its own sake, we can lose sight of what truly matters. The ego may push us to focus on ourselves, how we look, what we achieve, or how we compare to others. This can lead to a cycle of striving for external validation, only to find that it never fully satisfies. The recognition, once received, fades, and we're left seeking more. This can leave us feeling disconnected as we chase after something external rather than focusing on developing our inner self. Humility, however, offers a different kind of fulfillment. It teaches us that we don't need to be the center of attention to be valued. Humility encourages us to shift our focus from ourselves to others. It reminds us that we are not the sum of our achievements or possessions, but that our worth comes from our character, our actions, and how we treat those around us. A humble person finds contentment in knowing they've done something good without needing others to recognize it. They take pride in their work, not because it will bring them praise, but because it aligns with their values and contributes to a greater good. The desire for recognition often comes from a deep-seated need for self-assurance. We want to know that we matter, that our efforts have meaning, and that we are valued by others. The ego feeds this need, pushing us to seek constant validation. But humility teaches us that our worth is not dependent on others' approval. Instead of relying on external affirmation, humility encourages us to find confidence in who we are, not in what others think of us. This doesn't mean we reject all forms of recognition, but we learn to accept it without allowing it to define us. A good example of this balance can be seen in the world of artists. An artist who is driven solely by ego may create with the sole purpose of gaining recognition. They want their work to be admired, to be sold for a high price, or to be displayed in prestigious galleries. While these things can be rewarding, the artist may find themselves always seeking the next opportunity for praise without ever truly connecting with the deeper purpose of their work. They may become frustrated when their art is not appreciated in the way they expect, leading them to feel unfulfilled despite their success. A humble artist, on the other hand, creates because it is their passion. They seek to express themselves, to communicate with others through their art, not to gain recognition. They may still seek improvement and acknowledgement, but their focus is more on the process of creation rather than the outcome. This humility allows them to be more open to learning, growing, and evolving as an artist. They are less likely to be discouraged by criticism or lack of recognition because their value does not come from external validation, but from their internal sense of purpose. In relationships, too, the balance between ego and humility plays a role. In any close relationship, there is a desire to be seen and heard. We all want our feelings to be acknowledged and our needs to be understood. But when the ego takes over, we may become more focused on our own needs and desires rather than being attentive to the needs of others. We may insist on being right, seek attention, or demand recognition for our efforts. This can strain relationships as it creates a dynamic where one person's ego overshadows the needs of the other. Humility, however, fosters connection. A humble person is willing to listen, to admit when they're wrong, and to give credit where it's due. They are less focused on proving themselves and more focused on building meaningful, supportive relationships. Humility doesn't mean sacrificing our own needs, but it encourages us to recognize that we are part of something bigger than ourselves, whether it's a family, a community, or a partnership. The struggle between ego and humility is not an easy one. The ego can feel like a powerful force, constantly pushing us to seek recognition, validation, and success. But humility offers a different kind of strength. It teaches us that true fulfillment comes not from being seen, but from being authentic. It encourages us to focus on our values, to serve others, and to find peace in knowing that our worth is not defined by the attention we receive, but by the integrity with which we live. We all want control. The feeling of being in charge, knowing that we can shape our lives according to our plans and decisions, gives us a sense of security and stability. We make choices based on the belief that we can steer our lives in the direction we want. Whether it's controlling our daily routines, managing our work, or making plans for the future, control gives us a sense of empowerment. Yet, despite our best efforts, much of life is unpredictable. No matter how much we try to control, uncertainty always lurks just out of sight. The challenge, then, is finding a balance between our desire for control and our need to accept the uncertainty that is part of life. Think about a person who meticulously plans their career. They have set clear goals, created a roadmap, and worked tirelessly toward those milestones. They know where they want to be in 5 years, 10 years, and beyond. At first, everything seems to unfold just as planned. They get the promotions, the raises, and the recognition they hoped for. But then, something unexpected happens. A sudden economic downturn, a shift in the company, or changes in the industry. Their well-laid plans begin to unravel. The job they thought was secure suddenly isn't. They realize that, despite their best efforts, they can't control the larger forces at play. This realization is jarring. The desire for control, which once felt empowering, now feels limiting because it can't protect them from the unpredictability of life. This is a common experience for many of us. We want to shape our lives in a way that feels secure and predictable, but life has its own plans. It's easy to get caught up in the need to control every aspect of our lives. We work hard, make careful choices, and set goals, but life rarely follows a straight path. Things change, unexpectedly, often without warning, and we can't always control those changes. The more we try to hold on tightly to the way we think things should go, the more we risk feeling anxious and overwhelmed by the things we can't predict or manage. In relationships, too, we often desire control. We want to know that things will work out, that the people we care about will be there for us, and that we can influence the course of our relationships. We may try to manage every detail, from how often we communicate to how we show affection, thinking that control will make things run smoothly. But relationships, by nature, are unpredictable. People change, situations shift, and feelings evolve. No matter how much we try to control them, we can't always predict how a relationship will turn out. Sometimes, the very act of trying to control things can push people away or create unnecessary tension. The The more we try to hold on, the more we risk losing the connection we're trying to preserve. It's only when we let go of the need for control and accept that relationships are not entirely in our hands that we can truly allow them to grow and evolve. Even in the small day-to-day choices, the desire for control can clash with the uncertainty of life. Consider someone who plans their day with great care. They set aside time for work, exercise, meals, and relaxation, making sure everything is in its place. But as the day progresses, things don't always go according to plan. Traffic delays, unexpected phone calls, or a sudden change in their schedule can throw everything off. The need for control feels frustrating in these moments. They can become tense, annoyed, or anxious because the order they tried so hard to create is disrupted. The more they focus on maintaining control, the more they resist the flow of life, and the more stress they experience. This push and pull between control and acceptance of uncertainty is a common struggle. We all want to feel like we are in charge of our lives. We want to make choices and see the results of our hard work and decisions. But we also know, deep down, that life is unpredictable. Sometimes the best we can do is prepare for the unexpected, adjust our expectations, and find ways to cope with the changes that come our way. The key to managing this tension is learning to accept uncertainty. This doesn't mean abandoning all control or giving up on making plans. It simply means understanding that no matter how carefully we plan, we cannot predict or control everything. There's always an element of the unknown, and that's part of what makes life interesting. Embracing uncertainty can actually lead to a more relaxed and flexible approach to life. It allows us to adapt when things don't go as planned, and to let go of the need for everything to be perfect. We can still work toward our goals, make thoughtful decisions, and set clear intentions, but we must also accept that there will be bumps along the way, and that's okay. For example, a person who is preparing for a big event, like a wedding or a vacation, might spend weeks or months planning every detail. They want everything to go smoothly, and they make sure to control every aspect of the event. But despite their best efforts, something unexpected happens. The weather changes, a guest cancels last minute, or a vendor makes a mistake. In these moments, the desire for control can make it difficult to enjoy the event. The focus shifts from appreciating the moment to trying to fix what's wrong. But when the person accepts that things won't always go as planned, they can relax and enjoy what is happening instead of focusing on what isn't. Similarly, in a career, a person who accepts the uncertainty of the job market might find themselves more at ease during periods of instability. They know that no matter how well they perform, there are factors beyond their control. Economic conditions, shifts in the industry, or changes in leadership. By embracing this uncertainty, they are able to focus on what they can control, doing their best work, developing new skills, and maintaining a positive attitude, without becoming overly fixated on outcomes they cannot control. Acceptance of uncertainty doesn't mean giving up on our goals or resigning ourselves to passivity. It's about finding balance, understanding that while we can control certain aspects of our lives, much of what happens is beyond our grasp. By accepting this, we can navigate life with more ease and less stress. The uncertainty we face can lead to new opportunities, growth, and unexpected experiences that we might have missed if we were too focused on maintaining control. In the end, our desire for control is natural, but it must coexist with the reality of uncertainty. Life will always throw curveballs, no matter how carefully we plan. The challenge is to embrace the unpredictable nature of life, knowing that we can still make choices and influence our paths, even while accepting that not everything is within our control. We all celebrate success. It's what we aim for, what we dream of, and what we often measure our worth by. Achieving success feels rewarding. It brings praise, recognition, and the satisfaction of knowing that our efforts have paid off. Whether it's a promotion, an award, or completing a personal goal, success often comes with a sense of pride and accomplishment. However, as much as we value success, failure holds an important place in our lives as well. Failure, though less celebrated, often offers the most valuable lessons. It challenges us, teaches us resilience, and pushes us to grow in ways that success cannot. Take, for example, a person who starts a business. They put in long hours, invest their savings, and do everything they can to make it work. When the business succeeds, it feels like the culmination of years of hard work. There is joy in seeing the venture flourish, and people admire their accomplishment. Yet, if the business fails, it can feel like a crushing defeat. All that effort and investment seem wasted. But often, failure brings insights that success cannot. It might teach the person how to handle setbacks, how to pivot in difficult situations, and how to approach future opportunities differently. The lessons learned from failure, whether it's how to budget more effectively, how to connect with customers better, or how to persevere in the face of difficulty, can become the foundation for future success. Consider someone who has spent years training for a major athletic competition. They put in the work, follow the routine, and push their limits. When they finally compete, they come up short. Maybe they don't win, or maybe they don't place as high as they expected. The immediate feeling is disappointment and frustration. The idea of failure stings. Yet, the experience of falling short often teaches them more than a victory ever could. They learn what went wrong, whether it was a lack of preparation, a need for better focus, or simply the importance of resilience. Failure in this case becomes a powerful teacher. It offers the opportunity to adjust, to grow, and to come back stronger. In everyday life, we often shy away from failure. It's uncomfortable, and it challenges our ego. We like to feel competent, successful, and capable. Failure exposes our vulnerabilities and reminds us that we are not always in control. It's easy to think that failure is something to avoid at all costs. But the reality is that it's often the stepping stone to greater achievements. We can only learn so much from success. It shows us what we did right, but it doesn't always help us understand how to improve or adapt. Failure, however, forces us to examine our actions, rethink our strategies, and adapt in ways that success doesn't require. Take someone learning a new skill, like playing an instrument. At first, they struggle to get the notes right. Their timing is off, and the sound isn't what they imagined. They might feel frustrated or discouraged. They may want to quit, seeing the constant failure as proof that they're not good enough. But if they push through the discomfort of failure, they eventually improve. They learn from their mistakes, adjust their approach, and grow as a musician. Without failure, they would never have had the chance to truly understand their mistakes and learn from them. Success, in this case, would have come too easily and not given them the depth of understanding that failure brought. Even in relationships, failure teaches us valuable lessons. In the early stages of a relationship, we may make mistakes. We may say the wrong thing, act selfishly, or fail to listen. These mistakes, if we learn from them, can make us better partners in the future. It's through the failure to meet expectations or communicate well that we realize the importance of understanding and compromise. Success in relationships is important, but without the failure to grow from, we would miss the chance to develop a deeper connection and understanding with others. The struggles and failures in relationships often provide us with the tools to build stronger, more meaningful bonds. Success, while desirable, can also lead to complacency. When things are going well, it's easy to fall into a routine and stop challenging ourselves. Success can make us comfortable, and comfort can sometimes lead to stagnation. Failure, on the other hand, doesn't allow for complacency. It forces us to adapt and change. It reminds us that we don't have all the answers and that we need to keep learning, growing, and improving. While success can feel like the end of a journey, failure often signals the beginning of something new. It pushes us to evolve, to take risks, and to keep moving forward despite setbacks. We also need to recognize that failure isn't the end. In fact, it's a part of the process that brings us closer to success. If we never fail, we never test our limits. We never learn the things that success alone can't teach. The most successful people are often those who have faced the most failure. They didn't give up when things didn't go their way. Instead, they used their failures as lessons, adjusting their strategies and becoming better in the process. Each failure brought them closer to their goals, even if they didn't realize it at the time. There's also a deeper, more personal aspect to the value of failure. Failure teaches us humility. It shows us that we are not perfect and that we can't control everything. It reminds us that we are vulnerable and that we must keep learning. This humility, when embraced, leads to personal growth and a stronger sense of self. Success might make us feel powerful or accomplished, but failure brings us back to earth, helping us to stay grounded and focused on what truly matters. The fear of failure often holds people back from taking risks. They are afraid of what it will mean if they don't succeed. But those who are willing to fail, to take the risk, often find that failure is a necessary part of success. It's easy to stay in the safe zone, avoiding failure at all costs, but in doing so, we miss the chance to push ourselves and learn. Without failure, we would never understand the true value of success. It's the process of failing, adjusting, and trying again that makes the achievement so rewarding. Failure is often seen as something negative, something to avoid at all costs. But in reality, failure is a powerful tool for growth. It challenges us, teaches us, and helps us move forward in ways that success simply can't. Success is celebrated because it marks the completion of a journey, but failure marks the beginning of the next step. It teaches us valuable lessons, whether we realize it immediately or later down the road. It reminds us that we are always learning, growing, and evolving. Failure, when embraced, becomes a stepping stone to greater success. We all long for love. The desire for connection, for someone to truly see us and understand us, is at the core of being human. Love brings us joy, comfort, and a sense of belonging. Whether it's romantic love, friendship, or family, the need to feel close to others is something we all share. Yet, with that desire comes a fear that can be just as strong, the fear of vulnerability. To truly connect with someone, we must open ourselves up, share our thoughts, our feelings, and our insecurities. But vulnerability, by its nature, feels risky. It means exposing parts of ourselves that might be judged, rejected, or misunderstood. This tension between wanting love and fearing vulnerability is a challenge many of us face. Consider someone who is in a relationship and feels a deep emotional connection with their partner. They want to share more, to be open and honest about their fears, their dreams, and their past. But every time they try, a part of them hesitates. What if they say something that makes their partner pull away? What if they open up too much and end up getting hurt? The fear of being vulnerable often holds them back. They might bottle up their feelings or avoid certain conversations, even though they crave that deeper connection. The desire for love and closeness is there, but the fear of vulnerability keeps them from fully embracing it. In the early stages of a relationship, this fear can be particularly strong. People often want to present their best selves, to show that they are capable, strong, and lovable. But behind that desire to impress is the fear that if the other person sees our flaws, they may not accept us. It can feel safer to keep parts of ourselves hidden, to protect our hearts from the possibility of rejection or disappointment. This is especially true if past experiences have shown that vulnerability can lead to pain. The scars of previous heartbreak can make us hesitant to take the emotional risks that love requires. The tension between wanting love and fearing vulnerability can also play out in friendships. We want to connect with others, to feel like we truly belong, but opening up to someone requires trust. Sharing personal experiences, feelings, and struggles means putting ourselves in a position where we might be judged or let down. It's easier to keep things on a surface level, to maintain a sense of safety by keeping our true selves hidden. But the deeper, more meaningful connections in life come from being vulnerable. It's in the moments of openness, of sharing our fears and dreams, that true bonds are formed. Yet, despite this, the fear of what might happen if we reveal too much often keeps us from taking that step. Even in family relationships, the desire for connection can be clouded by the fear of vulnerability. Family is supposed to be a safe space, a place where we can be ourselves without fear of judgment. But sometimes, the people we are closest to can be the hardest to open up to. We fear that our flaws or mistakes might be magnified or used against us. The thought of being vulnerable with those closest to us can feel like too much of a risk. We may hold back parts of ourselves to protect our image or to avoid conflict, even though we yearn for true closeness and understanding. The fear of vulnerability is rooted in the uncertainty of how others will respond. When we open ourselves up, we can't control how the other person will react. They might not respond in the way we hope, and that fear of rejection or hurt can stop us from even trying. This fear often causes us to withdraw or to keep relationships at a surface level. But in doing so, we miss the deeper connections that love and vulnerability can bring. Imagine a person who has been hurt in the past, whether in a romantic relationship or by a close friend. They may have shared their feelings and been met with rejection, betrayal, or indifference. As a result, they begin to close themselves off emotionally. The next time they meet someone they feel a connection with, the desire for love is strong, but the fear of opening up is even stronger. They might hesitate to let anyone in, thinking, what if this happens again? They long for love, but the vulnerability required to create that connection feels like a dangerous leap. The protective walls they've built prevent them from fully embracing the opportunity for closeness. At the same time, the fear of vulnerability can also prevent us from fully loving ourselves. We often struggle with feelings of inadequacy or fear that we are not enough. This can make it difficult to be open with others because we are not comfortable with who we are. If we don't accept our own flaws and vulnerabilities, we can't expect others to. True love, both for others and for ourselves, requires acceptance of imperfection. It's only when we allow ourselves to be vulnerable with our own emotions, mistakes, and fears that we can truly connect with others on a deeper level. The fear of vulnerability often stems from the belief that our imperfections make us unworthy of love. But in truth, it's these imperfections that make us human and relatable to others. The desire for love and the fear of vulnerability also show up in how we approach intimacy. We want to feel close to someone, to share physical and emotional intimacy, but that requires opening up in ways that can feel uncomfortable or exposing. The vulnerability of intimacy is not just about physical closeness, but about sharing our inner selves. It means letting go of control, allowing ourselves to be seen without the walls we often build to protect ourselves. It's this raw openness that creates true intimacy, yet it's precisely what many of us avoid out of fear. The desire for connection is strong, but the fear of being emotionally exposed can hold us back from fully embracing it. Sometimes, the desire for love and the fear of vulnerability are at odds within us. We want to experience the joy and fulfillment of close, meaningful relationships, but we are afraid of the emotional risks involved. The more we try to protect ourselves from the pain of vulnerability, the more we distance ourselves from the very thing we long for: connection. This creates a cycle where the desire for love remains unmet because we refuse to let go of the fear that holds us back. The challenge is learning to embrace vulnerability. It doesn't mean throwing ourselves into situations blindly or recklessly. It means allowing ourselves to be open and honest about who we are, with the understanding that vulnerability can lead to both growth and connection. Yes, there is risk, but without vulnerability, love remains a distant hope rather than a lived experience. By accepting vulnerability as a necessary part of love, we open ourselves to deeper, more authentic connections. The fear may never fully go away, but with each step of vulnerability, we move closer to the love and connection we seek. We live in a world that constantly promotes the idea of material wealth. Advertisements, social media, and even the people around us often emphasize the importance of owning things: bigger houses, fancier cars, the latest gadgets, and more. Material wealth is seen as a sign of success, a way to prove that we've made it. Yet, in the midst of this pursuit, there is a growing number of people who are turning to minimalism. These individuals are choosing to live with less, believing that happiness doesn't come from what we own, but from how we live. The tension between materialism and minimalism presents an interesting contrast in today's society. Consider someone who works hard to climb the corporate ladder. They strive for the promotions, the pay raises, and the accolades that come with success. As they achieve these goals, they begin to accumulate more: a bigger house, nicer clothes, a high-end car. With every new acquisition, they feel a sense of accomplishment. Yet over time, they might begin to feel something missing. Despite having more than they ever thought they would, there's a sense of emptiness. The new car quickly becomes just another car. The large house starts to feel like a burden to maintain, and the clothes, while nice, don't bring the lasting joy they expected. The pursuit of material wealth may provide temporary satisfaction, but it doesn't always fill the deeper need for meaning or fulfillment. On the other side, there are people who have embraced minimalism. They choose to live with fewer possessions, focusing instead on experiences, relationships, and personal growth. They may not have the newest phone, the largest house, or the trendiest clothes, but they feel richer in ways that matter more to them. For these individuals, owning fewer things means less clutter, less stress, and more time to focus on what truly brings joy. A small, cozy home may offer them all the space they need. They find satisfaction in simplicity, in being present rather than accumulating. Minimalism doesn't mean living without things entirely. It means being intentional about what we own and how it fits into our lives. The contrast between materialism and minimalism isn't just about the amount of stuff we have. It's about our relationship with those things. Materialism often stems from the belief that more possessions will lead to more happiness. We think that if we just acquire the next item, whether it's a new phone or a designer handbag, it will somehow bring us the fulfillment we're seeking. However, the joy that comes from purchasing new items is often short-lived. Once the excitement fades, we find ourselves looking for the next thing to fill the void. This cycle of acquisition can become exhausting and unfulfilling, leading us to constantly chase after something that never quite satisfies. Minimalism, by contrast, is about letting go of the excess and focusing on what truly adds value to our lives. When we live minimally, we are forced to evaluate our possessions and decide what is truly important. This process encourages us to keep only what we need or what brings us joy. For example, someone living minimally might choose to invest in a few high-quality items that will last longer, rather than constantly buying cheaper, less durable goods. They might not have a large wardrobe, but the clothes they do own are well-made and versatile. The focus shifts from quantity to quality, from accumulation to intentional living. Consider a person who feels overwhelmed by their cluttered home. The rooms are filled with things they don't need, and yet they still feel the urge to buy more. There's a constant desire to acquire new items to keep up with trends or to fill a sense of emptiness. However, the more they buy, the more they find themselves dissatisfied. One day, they decide to declutter their home, getting rid of things that no longer serve them. As they pare down their possessions, they feel a sense of relief. The house feels lighter, more spacious, and more peaceful. This act of simplification brings them joy, not from what they own, but from the space they've created for themselves. They find that they are less focused on acquiring things and more focused on enjoying the present moment. Their happiness comes not from what they have, but from the freedom they've found in living with less. The push for material wealth in modern society often leads to comparisons. Social media makes it easy to see what others have, what they're buying, where they're traveling, and what they're wearing. This constant exposure to other people's possessions can create a sense of inadequacy, a feeling that we need to keep up. We might buy things we don't need simply because others have them, but minimalism encourages us to reject these external pressures. Instead of trying to measure up to others, minimalism focuses on living according to our own values. It's about deciding what matters to us, not what others think we should have. Minimalism can also lead to a greater sense of freedom. The more possessions we have, the more we are tied to them. Our things require maintenance, cleaning, and attention. A larger home means more rooms to fill, more space to clean, and more expenses to manage. A car needs to be maintained, washed, and fueled. The more we accumulate, the more time, energy, and money we invest in maintaining those possessions. In contrast, minimalism allows us to simplify our lives. By owning less, we free ourselves from the constant need to care for things, and we can spend more time on experiences that truly matter. Whether it's spending time with family, traveling, or pursuing hobbies, minimalism offers more space for what we truly value. The benefits of minimalism aren't just about reducing clutter or cutting down on expenses. It's also about mindset. Minimalism encourages us to focus on what's truly meaningful in life. It teaches us to appreciate the things we have rather than always striving for more. By living with less, we can find more space for gratitude, for experiences, and for personal growth. Materialism often leads to a never-ending cycle of consumption, but minimalism offers a path toward contentment and fulfillment. Ultimately, the contrast between materialism and minimalism is a question of values. Materialism often equates success with accumulation, more possessions, more wealth, more recognition. But for many people, true happiness isn't found in what they own, but in how they live. Minimalism teaches that less can be more, that fulfillment comes not from the quantity of things we own, but from the quality of our experiences and relationships. By embracing simplicity, we can find greater joy, peace, and freedom in our lives, no longer bound by the need for more, but content with what we truly need. We are often told to live in the moment. The idea is simple: enjoy the present, embrace what's happening right now, and let go of the worries about the past or the future. Living in the moment promises peace, freedom, and the opportunity to fully experience life as it unfolds. Yet despite this advice, we are constantly preparing for the future. We make plans, set goals, and organize our lives with the future in mind. This creates a tension. On one hand, we want to be present, but on the other, we feel the need to plan and secure what comes next. Consider a person who spends their days working toward a promotion. They focus on advancing their career, thinking about what their future will look like once they reach their goals. Every decision they make is guided by this vision of the future. They spend their evenings studying for exams, attending networking events, or planning their next career move. Yet, when they reach that promotion, they may realize that the excitement fades quickly. The future they work toward has arrived, and now it's time to think about the next step. Despite having achieved what they set out to do, they find that they're still thinking about what comes next instead of fully enjoying the accomplishment in the present moment. The focus on planning for the future has kept them from savoring the current success. This isn't just true in careers. We spend so much of our time preparing for what's to come, whether it's saving for retirement, planning for a vacation, or even making decisions about where to live. Our lives are often structured around what might happen rather than what is happening. The constant focus on the future can make it difficult to truly enjoy the present. The more we focus on preparing for tomorrow, the more we miss out on today. The desire to plan for the future is a natural part of life. We make decisions based on what we want in the long run. We prepare for the unexpected and make sure we're financially secure, physically healthy, and emotionally ready for what's to come. We tell ourselves that by planning, we will avoid stress and anxiety later. But this can sometimes cause us to live in a state of constant anticipation, always focused on what's next rather than what's now. For example, a person might spend years working hard to build a career. But in doing so, they miss important moments with their family or friends. They're always looking ahead, and in doing so, they miss the joy of being present with the people who matter most. Take a different example. A person who spends their entire life saving for retirement, thinking that once they have enough money, they can finally relax and enjoy life. They work long hours, sacrifice time with family and friends, and delay personal enjoyment, all in the name of preparing for the future. But when retirement comes, they may find that they've lost the opportunity to fully enjoy life along the way. They're so used to focusing on the future that they can't fully embrace the present, even when they have the time and resources to do so. The desire to plan for the future has stolen the joy of living in the moment. While it's important to plan, living in the moment offers its own set of benefits. When we are fully present, we experience life more deeply. We notice the small things, like the warmth of the sun on our skin, the sound of laughter, or the quiet satisfaction of a good meal. These moments can feel richer when we aren't distracted by worries about the future. For instance, someone who spends time with a close friend, fully present in the conversation, can experience a deeper connection than someone who is preoccupied with what they have to do after the meeting. Living in the moment allows us to appreciate what we have right now, instead of constantly chasing after what's next. The challenge is finding a balance between living in the moment and planning for the future. The desire to plan is part of how we take care of ourselves and others. We need to consider the future when making decisions, especially when it comes to long-term goals like health, finances, and relationships. But the constant focus on the future can take us out of the present, preventing us from truly living. The key is not to abandon planning, but to also find time to be present and appreciate what is happening in our lives right now. Imagine someone who plans a trip to a beautiful destination. They've been looking forward to it for months, and they've carefully organized every detail. When the trip finally comes, they are so focused on making sure everything goes according to plan that they miss out on the experience itself. They are constantly checking the itinerary, making sure they're on schedule, and worrying about what comes next. In this case, planning has overshadowed the ability to enjoy the journey. The same trip, if taken with a mindset of living in the moment, could have been full of spontaneous enjoyment, relaxing on the beach without worrying about the time, exploring new places without needing to follow a strict schedule, or simply being present with the people they are traveling with. It's easy to get caught up in the pressure to always plan ahead. The modern world, with its fast pace and constant expectations, can make it feel like we always need to be preparing for something. But when we are overly focused on the future, we lose sight of the fact that life is happening right now. We may think that we will be happy once we reach certain goals or milestones, but often we realize that the pursuit of those goals can be just as fulfilling as reaching them. The act of being present, of appreciating where we are right now, can bring a sense of peace and contentment that planning alone cannot provide. There are, of course, times when planning is necessary. We need to make decisions about our health, our finances, and our relationships. We can't simply ignore the future and hope everything will work out. However, this doesn't mean we should lose sight of the present. Planning for the future doesn't have to mean ignoring the present. It's possible to take steps toward the future while also being fully engaged with what's going on right now. It's about finding a balance between taking care of what's to come and appreciating what's here now. The struggle between living in the moment and planning for the future is something we all face. We want to enjoy the life we have right now, but we also want to make sure we are prepared for what lies ahead. It's natural to want to control our future, but the act of doing so shouldn't prevent us from appreciating what is happening today. The challenge is to plan for the future without losing the ability to enjoy the present. Finding this balance allows us to move through life with both purpose and appreciation. We can plan ahead without forgetting to live fully in the moment. We live in a world where action is often celebrated. We are encouraged to take charge, to make decisions, and to move quickly toward our goals. Action is seen as the key to progress. When we act, we get results, or so we're told. But sometimes, the urge to do something can cloud our judgment. Inaction, or even patience, can often be the better choice. There are moments when waiting, stepping back, or simply pausing before acting leads to better outcomes than rushing into action. Consider a person who faces a difficult situation at work. A problem arises, and the instinct is to immediately tackle it, to come up with a solution and fix it as quickly as possible. The pressure to act can feel overwhelming, but what happens when they take a step back and wait? Perhaps after some time, new information comes to light, or the situation naturally resolves itself. If they had rushed in, they might have made the problem worse or missed a better solution. In this case, inaction, or at least the choice to pause, turned out to be the wisest course of action. Sometimes, the best decision is to do nothing and let things unfold. On the other hand, there are plenty of moments where taking action is exactly what we need. When we're faced with an opportunity, waiting for the perfect moment or second-guessing ourselves can lead to missed chances. Imagine someone who is thinking about starting their own business. They have an idea, they've done some research, and they know they want to take the leap. But instead of moving forward, they hesitate. They keep thinking about all the possible risks, the challenges they might face, and the mistakes they could make. In doing so, they delay the decision, pushing it off again and again. Eventually, someone else takes the idea and starts a business with it. The opportunity is lost simply because they didn't act when they had the chance. Inaction in this case led to regret. In life, we're constantly making decisions about whether to take action or hold back. It's not always easy to know which path is right. Action can bring immediate results, whether positive or negative. When we act, we have the chance to see changes, to try something new, or to push forward toward a goal. But there's a flip side to that. Sometimes acting too quickly leads to mistakes. When we rush into decisions without thinking them through, we often miss key details, overlook potential problems, or make choices that aren't fully informed. Think about someone facing a decision about moving to a new city for a job. The excitement of the new opportunity pulls them to act quickly. But if they rush without taking the time to consider all the factors, like the cost of living, the community, and the job's long-term prospects, they may find that they've moved somewhere that doesn't work for them. Taking action without fully understanding the consequences can lead to regret. In this case, taking the time to reflect and wait might have led to a more informed, better decision. At times, inaction is not about doing nothing at all, but about knowing when to let go and wait for the right moment. In personal relationships, for example, sometimes patience is key. If we push too hard, try to force a conversation, or act out of frustration, it can harm the relationship. But waiting, giving space, and allowing things to develop naturally can lead to stronger, more meaningful connections. The desire to control the situation, to act immediately, may be tempting, but it's often the patience to let the relationship evolve that leads to the most positive outcome. In some cases, inaction is a form of wisdom. It's about knowing when to let life play out. A person might be tempted to intervene in a family situation or to offer advice when it's not needed. But by holding back and allowing others to make their own decisions, they may give them the space they need to grow. Sometimes it's in the absence of action that others find their own way. The person who can step back and wait without forcing their own agenda can often support others better in the long run. The decision between action and inaction is often linked to timing. Acting too quickly can lead to mistakes, while waiting too long can result in missed opportunities. For example, in the stock market, buying a stock at the right time can lead to significant returns, while waiting too long might cause you to miss the best price. On the other hand, acting too quickly without understanding the market conditions can lead to losses. In this case, a balance of patience and timing is required. It's not always about acting fast, but knowing when the right moment to act will be. In everyday life, we often face similar dilemmas. Should we take the job offer now, or should we wait for other opportunities? Should we speak up in a meeting, or should we hold our thoughts and listen? Should we act on a strong impulse, or should we wait until we have more information? The decision to act or wait often depends on how well we can assess the situation and understand the potential consequences of both action and inaction. Sometimes, waiting gives us more clarity. Other times, taking action helps us move past uncertainty and take control of a situation. The fear of inaction is also a common concern. We worry that if we don't act, we'll fall behind, miss out, or lose our chance. This fear can push us to take action without thinking it through, simply to avoid the discomfort of inaction. But this fear can also trap us in a cycle of unnecessary motion. We end up acting out of stress, worry, or impatience rather than thoughtful consideration. We might find ourselves doing something simply because we feel pressured, not because it's the right choice. Patience and inaction don't always feel productive. In a world that values action and visible results, choosing not to act can feel like doing nothing at all. But inaction can often be a form of preparation. It can be a chance to observe, gather more information, and understand the situation better before jumping in. Just because we aren't acting doesn't mean we aren't moving forward. Sometimes, waiting for the right time to act, or simply taking a step back to reflect, is the most productive thing we can do. The key is recognizing that there are moments when action is essential. But there are also times when patience is the better choice. Knowing when to act and when to wait is not always easy, but learning to navigate between the two can lead to more thoughtful decisions and better outcomes. Whether in moments of doubt, in times of opportunity, or in the course of our daily lives, balancing action with inaction helps us approach challenges with more clarity and purpose. We all have a tendency to cling to the past. The memories, experiences, and people that shaped us often become a part of who we are. It's natural to hold on to these moments. They provide comfort, a sense of identity, and sometimes even a sense of control. We look back at them when we're feeling uncertain or nostalgic, and sometimes we find ourselves living in the past rather than embracing the present. But while the past can shape us, moving forward in life requires us to let go. Letting go doesn't mean forgetting or erasing those experiences. It means not allowing them to hold us back from the opportunities and growth that lie ahead. Consider a person who had a close friendship that ended badly. The pain of that loss lingers long after the friendship is over. They often replay the events in their mind, wishing they had handled things differently, or wondering if things could have turned out another way. These memories stay with them, occupying space in their thoughts, even though the situation is long in the past. The need to hold on to the details, the reasons behind the fallout, and the emotions tied to it can prevent them from moving on. Each time they think about it, they feel the same hurt, the same frustration, and the same sense of loss. The past continues to affect their present, keeping them stuck in a cycle of regret and pain. But in order to move forward, this person needs to let go. Letting go doesn't mean dismissing the past or pretending it didn't matter. It means acknowledging the experience, understanding the lessons learned, and then choosing to free themselves from the weight it carries. It's about accepting that while the past shaped who they are, it doesn't define who they have to be now. They have to release the grip that the memory has on them in order to embrace the new relationships, opportunities, and experiences waiting for them. Holding on to the past can also show up in the way we view ourselves. People often carry the weight of their past mistakes or failures, allowing those events to shape their self-worth. Someone who didn't succeed at a particular goal, whether it was a job they wanted or a project they didn't finish, might hold on to that failure for years. They might define themselves by it, letting it dictate their current actions or choices. Each time they try something new, they might hear that inner voice telling them they're not good enough or that they'll fail again. The fear of repeating the past keeps them from trying. They cling to the memory of their failure because it feels familiar, and in that familiarity, they find a sense of comfort, even if it's painful. But moving forward requires them to let go of that past failure. It's not about ignoring it, but about recognizing it as just one chapter in their story. By letting go, they free themselves from the burden of self-doubt and open up the possibility for success. The only way to make progress is to accept that failure is not permanent, and it doesn't define who they are. It's the same with mistakes. They are moments to learn from, not labels that we must carry forever. Letting go doesn't only apply to bad experiences or painful memories. It can also apply to good times that we wish could last forever. When we hold on too tightly to the past, we risk missing out on the present. A person who constantly looks back to a time when things were easier, better, or happier may struggle to enjoy the present. Maybe they had a carefree childhood, or a time in their life when everything seemed to go right. They constantly long for those days, thinking that the past is the best version of their life. As they hold on to these memories, they miss out on new experiences and relationships that could be just as meaningful. For instance, consider someone who had an idealized version of a relationship from their youth. They look back at the time with fondness, wishing they could go back to those moments. They may even compare their current relationships to this past love. And because no one can quite measure up, they remain unsatisfied with what they have now. They are holding on to an image of the past that can never be recreated. In doing so, they limit themselves from truly appreciating the present and all the potential that comes with it. It's easy to think that holding on to the past is a way of keeping something valuable, but often it's the act of letting go that brings freedom. When we hold on to something, whether it's a relationship, a dream, or a version of ourselves, we are weighed down. The past keeps us anchored in one place, even if we want to move forward. By letting go, we allow ourselves to be open to new possibilities. We make room for growth, for new experiences, and for new ways of thinking. Take someone who has experienced loss, whether it's the death of a loved one or the end of a significant relationship. The grief they feel is real, and it's important to process that pain. But if they spend years living in that grief, they risk shutting themselves off from the future. Their memories of the lost person or relationship continue to hold them back, keeping them stuck in the past. To truly move forward, they must let go of the idea that things should always be as they were. Letting go allows them to heal, to cherish the memories, but also to accept that life moves on. The process of letting go is not easy, and it doesn't happen overnight, but it's necessary for finding peace and embracing the new chapters of life. In some cases, letting go involves forgiving others or even ourselves. Holding on to anger, resentment, or regret can poison our ability to move forward. When we refuse to let go of a hurt or betrayal, we carry it with us, weighing us down and preventing us from experiencing peace. But forgiveness, whether it's for someone else or ourselves, creates space for healing. It allows us to release the grip the past has on us and to move forward with a clearer mind and a lighter heart. While it's easy to say that we need to let go of the past, the act of doing so is much more complex. It requires self-awareness, emotional work, and sometimes time. Letting go doesn't mean that the past loses its importance or that the memories fade. It simply means we stop allowing them to control us. We stop allowing them to prevent us from living fully in the present. Letting go is a necessary part of growth. It's about accepting that the past has shaped us, but it doesn't need to define us. We carry the lessons we've learned, but we also leave behind the pain, regret, and attachments that hold us back. The future is always uncertain, but it's only by letting go of the past that we can embrace what lies ahead.